Hello, and welcome to another video lecture for Mr. Mosier's 8th grade U.S. History class. We're going to be looking today at the origins of the Cold War, which takes place between 1947 and 1991. The textbook readings for today comes from 844 to 850. Our guiding questions today are: what two superpowers emerged at the end of World War II? Was the leader of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, a friend or a foe of the United States? What is the difference between capitalism and communism? And then, what was the Cold War? At the end of World War II, most of Europe and Asia are in complete ruin and destruction. But two countries sort of come out of the ashes of that devastation and emerge as major, powerful players in the years to follow World War II. And they will have kind of competing systems of government and economic systems, as well as policies that will kind of drive world affairs in the era after World War II. And these two countries are the United States and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, also known as the USSR. The question always comes up is, well, how did we become kind of an adversary to the Soviet Union that was our friend during World War II? Remember, during World War II, we were closely allied with Joseph Stalin. He formed in one of the major alliance powers, and was a major factor in helping win World War II. So, is Joseph Stalin a friend of the United States? Well, during World War II, he definitely was, because he definitely did help us defeat Hitler and the Axis powers in World War II. However, as we've learned earlier, though, Joseph Stalin was a pretty harsh dictator. He did kill millions of his own people, and through communism, took control over large aspects of factories and farms and put those under government control, known as collectivization. And so, was he our friend? Well, during World War II, yes, but there were definitely some mistrust issues going on between us and the Soviet Union, and even vice versa. Stalin didn't fully trust us and the other allies as well. So, as the war is coming to an end, there's definitely some fracturing going on between these allies, between the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and the United States, and in terms of what should the post-war world war look like. What should Europe look like now that the war is coming here to an end here? And really, we have two different economic systems at play here. You had communism, which is sort of championed by the Soviet Union, versus capitalism, which is championed by the United States. Communism is an economic system that is based on the idea that all property and resources should be evenly distributed among the citizens of that community. If you think about the root word of communism, which is community, that's really a big aspect of what communism tries to do, at least theoretically, is that everything is shared evenly among all of the aspects of that community. There's no private property. You can't own your own business. You can't own your own farms. It is owned collectively, and then all those resources are sort of shared out to the rest of the members of that society. Our system that we're used to in the United States is based on capitalism. There you do have an economic system based on private ownership of both farms and business, where people are in competition for those resources, and we have sort of this survival of the fittest mentality, is that businesses that can compete will survive, and those that don't will eventually run out of business. So if we can make this into an analogy, a very easy analogy here could be the cow analogy. So if we think about a cow farmer under communism, they don't own any of the cows. They're actually shared among all the neighbors collectively, and they all work together to basically, produce the milk, take care of the cattle, and all share evenly with that milk production. So everybody might in the community get exactly, like 1 gallon of milk, and everybody gets exactly the same amount, depending on how much is produced by the community. But under capitalism, it's not the same as communism. We are in competition with each other. So you might be a dairy farmer under capitalism, and you're competing with your neighbor down the road for business. And so you might sell one of your cows to buy a bull to increase the size of your herd, to increase your productivity, to lower your costs, so that you produce cheaper milk than your neighbor, so people will buy from you and not from your neighbor. And now your neighbor might go out of business because you are now the one selling all the milk in the neighborhood. So they might have to go into something different, maybe selling chickens or some other kind of business. So capitalism is this kind of competition of resources, and communism is more the sharing of those resources among the community. Unfortunately, communism historically has always shown that in order to control those resources requires a very strong, centralized government. So communism under like Joseph Stalin, you might have two cows and you take care of them, but the government takes all the milk. And if you complain about the amount of milk that you're receiving, you might be thrown in prison if you complain. So if we think a little bit about the Cold War, it's these really two competing ideologies that sort of stays at the center stage of the Cold War era. This difference between communism, the sharing equally of resources but leads to sort of a strong, central, powerful government, versus capitalism, which is this competitive system where you do have winners and losers, but you have a lot more individual freedom to make those choices. And so that becomes kind of the crux of this division that we know as the Cold War, where the two main superpowers that kind of emerged after World War II, the United States, the champion of democracy and capitalism, against the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, or the USSR, or the Soviet Union, also known as Russia, kind of the champion of communism and more of a dictatorship, totalitarian type of government. And both sides are kind of battling it out without actually directly battling. There's no actual physical battles between the two sides, but they do struggle for global power and influence around the world and see each other as an equal threat. So from the Soviet perspective here, here you have Uncle Sam climbing over the globe, coming towards the Soviet Union and encroaching on their influence and their territories around them. That's how the Soviet Union viewed the United States. We view the Soviet Union on the opposite side of they're the ones, this big, large bear coming across the globe, and they're starting to influence and try to control some of our allies and some of the regions around the globe. So this becomes the beginnings of the Cold War, a very important aspect of the time after World War II that will kind of dominate politics, as well as things that are going on domestically on the home front between 1947 and 1991. Thank you for listening, and as always, if you have questions, please ask your teacher.